Welcome to the Medovia Menopause Podcast, your trusted source for evidence-based, science-backed information related to menopause. Medovia is dedicated to changing the narrative about menopause by educating, raising awareness, and supporting women in this stage of life, both at home and in the workplace. Visit medovia.com to learn more. I'm one of your hosts, April Haberman, and I'm joined by Kim Hart. We're co-founders of Medovia, certified health coaches, registered yoga teachers, and midlife mamas specializing in menopause. You're listening to another episode of our podcast, where we offer expert guidance for the most transformative stage of life, bringing you real conversations, education, and resources to help you overcome challenges and reach your full potential through midlife. Join us and our special guests each episode as we bring vibrant, fun, and truthful conversation, and let us help you have a deeper understanding of menopause. Hi, everyone. Today we have Brittany Barreto on the show. Dr. Barreto dedicates her work to advancing women's health by equipping founders, investing in innovative ideas, and engaging key stakeholders to create better healthcare for women, females, and girls, an industry known as Femtech. She's the founder and chief innovation officer of Fem Health Insights, host of the Femtech Focus podcast, co-founder of Coyote Ventures, advisory board member for Johnson Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Indiana University, and an unconventional scientist, entrepreneur, and consultant that proves that anything is possible with hard work and heart. She is considered the voice of Femtech and is a 3-time recipient of top leaders in Femtech. Dr. Barreto has served on women's health committees with Gates Foundation, NIH, and HLTH. She is a Femtech Forbes contributor and hosts a tech column in Healthy Woman magazine. She's invited internationally to speak on the past, present, and future of women's health innovation. Dr. Barreto is revered by pharma, retail, and private equity as the go-to expert on all things Fem Health and Femtech. We know you are absolutely going to love this episode.
Hello, everybody. Today we have our friend, Dr. Brittany Barreto. Welcome to the podcast, Brittany.
Thanks for having me.
We're thrilled to have you. And you know what? You had us on your first LinkedIn Live 8 or 9 months ago, and I rewatched it in preparation for this conversation, and I had the worst technical problems. I don't know if you guys remember, but I was like, guys, I can't hear, I can't talk. And after that, I got like a new microphone and a different setup and all those things. So thanks for your patience. You and April recovered so well from that. And when I was watching it, I'm like, you guys, like, I stood in awe as I was rewatching it again. So,
we were master performers, right? Where somebody was coming
like,
in and out, and we just kept rolling. And
That's what they say, right? Just keep going. Just keep going.
And you kept going like, hey, Kim, are you here? Anyway, we love the work that you're doing, advancing female, women, girls' health and wellness through innovation. And we've learned so much by following your work. And so thank you for leading that. You're kind of known as the voice of Femtech. And there's so many great things that you're doing. I'd love to hear how you got into this. What is Femtech? What your background is? Just kind of, how did you get to here?
Wow. I could talk the rest of our time just with those 3 questions, but let me first define what Femtech is for the listeners who haven't heard the term. Femtech, essentially, it's like clean tech for climate change technology, or it's like ag tech for agricultural, but this time it's female tech. So it's solutions to conditions that solely, disproportionately, or differently affecting females. And so what I mean by that is that it's not just boobs and tubes, as I like to say. It's not just breastfeeding and fertility and menstruation. It's also migraines that disproportionately affect women, or autoimmune diseases, or heart disease. So heart disease actually disproportionately affects men, but the way that heart disease manifests in a female heart is very different than a man's heart. And so that's the differently part. And if we don't consider sex and gender from our basic scientific understanding of disease all the way through how does a woman metabolize this drug versus a man? Women may not be getting the right dosage of medication based on their hormones or their life stage, et cetera. And so femtech is this idea, again, you could think about it like it's gynecology in the tech world. And I started in this industry over 5 years ago, so about 2018, when I was working at an investment firm, and I started to meet women's health companies. And, I was meeting with startups every single day, and they were doing incredible work, like really futuristic, awesome, life-saving technologies. But whenever I met a women's health company, the thing that they were telling me was so shocking. They were saying things like, women are waiting 7 years for endometriosis diagnosis. And I was like, wait, why? And they're like, well, because a diagnostic test doesn't exist yet. And I'd be like, well, why? Right? Like, I just kept feeling like, well, why? Wait, what? Huh? How? Like, I learned about women having, their vaginas melting shut after radiation treatment of cervical cancer. I was like, wait, what? Right. So I just kept being like shocked as a female scientist, feminist. So I have a PhD in genetics. I'm a serial entrepreneur. My first startup was a DNA-based dating app. That's a whole nother episode for us.
I'd like to hear more about that later.
So I was working in tech, working in venture, investing in startups, and yet I had no idea how bad women's health was. And I think that's actually part of the issue, is that we don't even realize how not studied we are, from the basic benchtop science all the way through FDA approvals. And so, long story short, I got really inspired. I said, I want to work in this industry. And I started to Google femtech, and I couldn't find anything. This is in 2018. There wasn't a podcast. There wasn't a book. There wasn't a course. There wasn't accelerators. I couldn't find a list of femtech companies. People were speculating how many there might be. And I realized at that point that our industry had a name, femtech, which, by the way, I did not know had only been coined 2 years earlier, 2016.
Oh, wow.
The founder of Clue, the period tracking app, Ida Tin, she's the one who first said it in 2016. And at that point, I realized, oh, wow, this name's only 2 years old. There's no infrastructure here. There's no community. And that's what I've dedicated my life to the last 5 years, is building that. And so I started it with a podcast in the pandemic, because what's a girl to do in lockdown but start a podcast? And that podcast is still going on today. You can listen to it on any streaming service. It's called Femtech Focus, and we have over 250 episodes on there. I've actually used that to write a book that's coming out this fall called Unlocking Women's Health. Will be available on Amazon by the end of September of 2024. We have the largest virtual community group of women's health founders, so they can find each other, find community, find co-founders, find employees, get inspired, get funding. I've co-founded an investment firm to invest in femtech. So I have done a bunch of stuff the last 5 years, but at the end of the day, it's all so that we can raise awareness for the need for sex and gender to be considered in healthcare, but also to foster a safe environment with a lot of resources for these incredible founders that are solving issues that women need solved. So that's my answer to your questions there.
You don't sound very excited about it, so I'm sort of disappointed in that. No, I love that there's a space, there's a gap, and it needs to be filled. And we've, like I said, we've learned a ton from you as we've been trying to grow Medovia and all of the resources that you have. Talk a little bit more about your book. What is Unlocking Health, Femtech, and the Quest for Gender Equality? What is in the book, and kind of what's the premise behind it?
Why did you write it? Yeah, why a book? Right?
Well, Unlocking Women's Health, Femtech, and the Quest for Gender Equity essentially is filling in the gap of a book. So, some people go to TikTok to learn, some people go to a podcast to learn, but, even myself, I love to read a good book and read and learn about something. And so this is a book for people, not just in Femtech. I did write it in a way that everyday women who are interested in this industry can read it. What the book does is it kicks off with an introduction to what is femtech. And I discuss the history of, scientists assuming that if they included female animal models or females in clinical trials, then it would mess up their data. And there was some good intention there, right? There was some scientific reasoning behind it. It wasn't just that they didn't like women, But what we have seen is that that led to a male-based healthcare system with male-based medicines. And so I kind of talk about the history and the turning point where we now realize, oopsies, we need to include females. They are not small men. Okay. We need to actually research them. And so I talk about this history, this transition, and then where we're at today. You know, there's this industry called Femtech. Here's how many companies are in the space. Here's what they're working on. And the rest of the book highlights over 100 innovators in women's health. And they are categorized each chapter by a women's health vertical. So you have a chapter on mental health, chronic conditions, fertility, breastfeeding, menopause. I have a chapter called Beyond Bikini Medicine, and it's about, hematology, the study of blood. It's about brains and hearts and gut health. And then I end the book with a little bit of a futurism, kind of wrapping it up, talking about how I really hope that this book is a history book sooner rather than later. And that the things in the book that I talk about in terms of, maternal mortality and Black women dying more often than white women, or, women having to wait on average 5 years longer for the same diagnosis than men because of medical gaslighting, women not being believed, right? I hope that in a very short timeline, my book becomes shocking to people about how bad things were.
To inspire them to do better, right?
Yes,
that's the whole goal, right?
That's the whole goal.
Yeah. Let's do better going forward. And your book will be available in September, so we'll link all of that in the show notes as well, and that's exciting. I'm wondering. I have two questions for you. I'm wondering, because of where you sit, you have this vantage point that most of us don't have. Right? You can see what's on the horizon. You can see the gaps in femtech. I'm curious to know what you're most excited about as you look at the developments in this field. And then the second part of that is, where do we still need work? So what are we excited about that is really on the forefront? And then where do we need work?
Well, as a scientist, I am going to say that one of the things I'm most excited about is that we're really just starting to study women and starting to learn things, right? We just discovered last year, 2023, what was the actual hormone that's causing nausea during pregnancy, right? And it's like, it was just that no one had studied it, right? And we just were like, well, women are nauseous when they're pregnant. That's morning sickness. That's just how it happens. And now somebody finally was like, we should, what causes that and why? They researched it. They found, oh, it's this one elevated hormone. And then when it's elevated past this threshold, that's when women get it. And it's like, okay, well, now we could potentially make a drug or a supplement or a diet or something, or at least let women know you have very elevated. Wouldn't be surprised if you have a lot of nausea. And so I'm just really excited about the basic science. I mean, even menopause, right? Like what is causing hot flashes? And oh, look at that. Black women have more hot flashes than white women. Why is that biologically? So I'm just really excited for us to have some basic scientific knowledge because that's where innovation starts. It starts in the basic scientific research that then we can say, now that we understand how this actually works, what if we intervened with this, right? And it doesn't always have to be a drug, right? But it could be a vitamin. It could be, this, whatever, or even just a marker that we can inform women ahead of time. So much of women's health is women trying to convince doctors that something is wrong, right? Why don't we have doctors actually giving a heads up? Hey, based on your hormone profile, it looks like you're going to be entering menopause earlier than most women. So when you start to experience these symptoms at 36, that's actually what that is, right? Or whatever. So that's what I'm really excited about. I think where we need to do better. I mean, this is kind of broader than just verticals of women's health, but is funding. We have a huge issue in funding this. So at the NIH, so I'll speak, from the American funding system, the NIH, National Institutes of Health, there are 27 institutes. And so the institute we're most familiar with is infectious disease with Dr. Anthony Fauci, right? Now I can kind of refer to that and people know what I'm referring to in terms of these institutes, right? These institutes are allocated a budget of funding that they can then give out to grants to researchers. Of the 27 institutes, there is no institute for women's health. There's an institute for eye health. There's an institute for addiction. And those are all great. there is still no Institute for Women's Health. In fact, there's an Institute for Children's Health, and there is an Office of Women's Health underneath that. And so our health is directly linked to children's health. All right. Now, don't get me started on all what I believe in sexism and, what society is thinking of women's purpose, et cetera. We'll put a pin in that. But what I'm going to get at here is that an Office of Women's Health under the Institute of Children's Health, they are not allocated any money to give out grants. And so the amount of funding that's actually been dedicated to women's health is abysmal. In fact, in 2020, the NIH only dedicated 0.0001%, so that's 3 zeros after that decimal, 1% to menopause research. And menopause is not something that is, only, 10% of women get it. It's like, that's going to be half of our lives, if we can reach that age. And so and not even just age. I mean, if you have breast cancer in your 30s, you're going to be induced into menopause, right? There's so many other ways that you're induced into it as well. So when that's worse than a rounding error, right? Like that's not even, that's a smudge on someone's sheet that was dedicated to menopause research. So until we get that funding, then we can fund the research and the science. And once we have the science, then we can create solutions around them. And then the second, they call it the valley of death. It's terrible. I'd rather it be the valley of birth, which is investors. So, your venture capitalists, your angels, people who are predominantly white males, convincing them to invest in women's health solutions. And we do see an improvement over the last 5 years. One of the things that our company does is we do a lot of market research because I'm a big data science nerd junkie. I'm always like, okay, well, we can't just be angry. We need to report this, right? We need to quantify it so we can measure it and improve it. One of the things we found is that funding improves if you have media around the problem. And so what we have found is that if there is over 250 media mentions of a condition like menopause, the following year, we will see significantly higher investments in startups addressing that. And so I'm really... Yeah, we actually that is not even published yet. That's coming out later this year in a report we're doing. But to me, it's like, okay, convincing me that I still need to be on my TikTok. I still need to be doing podcast interviews because this is literally moving the needle in investment because these male investors had never heard about heavy menstrual bleeding due to fibroids. They had never heard of Hashimoto's disproportionately affecting females, right? So they figured it probably wasn't a big deal, probably wasn't a big market, probably not a problem for many people. But when they see Oprah saying my menopause is out of control, they're like, oh, this must be a real issue if Oprah's suffering from it. And so anyways, I'm really excited about that as well.
I think it's fascinating, everything that you just said. And I know that the majority of our listeners may not understand the lack of or that percentage of VC funding. Can you just share some statistics with us, just to put it in perspective here?
Sure. So the statistic currently lies that female founders, so if you're a woman who started a startup, you only receive 2% of all investment money that is allocated out. So if an investor is allocating out, $100 million, only 2 million of that 100 million is going to female started companies. And there's a lot of reasons and speculations and research around that in terms of why. I also, it's this whole beast. It's this whole beast, but it's something interesting. And this is actually part of the research that we're going to be publishing later this year is, there's this concept around female founders do better if they are in predominantly female industries. So for example, if you have a female founder in, she's doing cardiology, a heart, device, she's creating an artificial heart. She, compared to a white man who's also creating an artificial heart, he's going to win out in the funding. But if it's a nail polish company, something that society assumes as a female consumer purchase, if there's a white male versus a female, and I am saying white because let's not even get into race. Black founders, it's abysmal, right? Like, let's just gender, okay, versus not even putting race on the table. or disability or accent or, sexuality, like
Fill in the
whatever.
blank. Right.
Yeah. If it's a nail polish company, the female is more likely to fundraise because the investors assume, oh, she knows that industry, da, da, da.
Wow.
But something interesting we see in women's health is that with that paradigm existing, we should see women's health companies started by women fundraising a hell of a lot more than men do,
Right.
right?
You would assume.
You would assume. Our research does not show that. Our research shows, and it's been a feeling that we all have known, but no one's been able to quantify it. We're coming out. I wasn't going to promote this report, but that's coming out later.
Great.
Yeah, I love it.
Is that the male founders are fundraising about 3 times more than the female founders in women's health, and there's a lot of theories I have around it. Really interesting. We're still digging into it. But essentially, I'll bring up one of the things that we found is that if a female founder is very advocacy focused, so she's like, this is unacceptable, women deserve equity in healthcare, Black women's lives matter, the more loud she is. We did some natural language processing using their LinkedIn posts. The more she uses words around advocacy, the less chance she has of fundraising.
Wow.
The less chance.
Wow.
Oh
Less
my gosh.
chance.
I'm like, I need to rewrite
There's
it.
so much you can unpack with that.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
And we found out it's because investors perceive her ambition as focusing more on the purpose over the profits. The investor would assume this person's so passionate about this topic. If it came down to it, they'd give the test away for free if it was up to them. I rather invest in the male who I know is in it for the money, which, by the way, we have amazing male founders in Femtech. So it's actually a bias also against them that you're a male founder in women's health. Surely you're only in it for the money.
Yeah.
Versus you're a male founder in women's health because you appreciate women and have a wife and a daughter and think women matter, right? They're assuming, no, you must be in this for the money because that's what men would be after. So I'm going to invest in you. It's really quite mind-boggling. And it's all it's all subconscious, right? Like investors are generally great people who, are trying to do right, but there's these unconscious societal things. But once we shine light on it, people hopefully will start to see it and we can start to shift it.
Right.
Awesome.
Well, and one of the questions we had for you was how can we better advocate for ourselves and women's health? Clearly we don't want to advocate in the manner that you just mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
How can we do that? What is
well,
that
so
for general listener, right?
Yep. Full circle here. What we found is that those 250 media articles, like mentions, like in Forbes or Times or, CNN, once you pass 250 headline stories about a condition, the gender disparity actually disappears.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yep. And so that is actually the solution. The solution is making women's health mainstream. We need to have billboards that has actual red liquid on a pad. We need to have subway ads that are saying, vaginal dryness. We need to have Facebook allow advertisements for at-home breast exams, self-exams, because currently those are censored. Those are considered because we've sexualized the female body so much that even when it comes to the health of the female body, it's considered sexual. And so it's banned, but you can see erectile dysfunction everywhere, right?
Yes,
that's not an issue, not an issue at all. And so, there's layer on layer. I think that's one of the reasons I love Femtech so much, because it tickles my science, medical business, but it also tickles my activist, sociology, psychology. It's a vertical of women. It's a vertical of healthcare that depends so much on the government, on religion, on culture, right? If you have a tumor, it doesn't matter what religion you are mostly, right? Or it doesn't matter. There's not a law in Alabama that, oh, you have a tumor, sorry, you can't be treated here, right? But women's health, it's based on your geolocation, your heritage, your ethnicity. There's all these other forces influencing what treatment you can get.
I think that's one of the reasons we love being in the menopause space so much, because the people that are in it because they want to advocate for women, because they want to support women, and everyone's bringing up everyone's boat in this space. And so Oprah has done us, as you said, a huge favor. But let's shift for a minute and talk about menopause and the innovation in menopause. What do you see coming down in terms of research there and products there? What are companies doing to support menopause? I know you have a whole chapter. So let's talk about that a little bit, as we're trying to educate women on how they need to advocate for themselves in the menopause space.
Yeah. So the biggest push I see in the menopause space is telehealth services for hormone monitoring, hormone replacement treatment, et cetera. Yeah. And so it's essentially medical Zoom, right? And not to put them down, but it's specifically medical Zoom with menopause experts. And so that women can, usually a lot of times they are getting it through their employer, right? Where the employer's paying a fee for this site that the woman can then, participate and get treatment through. So that's actually the biggest vertical I see. And, it's not that I don't want to call it not novel, like it's not innovative. It is innovative, but it is essentially disrupting the access that women didn't have previously to menopause treatment and education. So we're innovating on that access. So we're bringing it forefront. We're saying, here's something available to you conveniently to get, education and treatment for your menopause symptoms. That's the biggest push I see. The things that I'm really excited about is the other solutions that are kind of like, whoa, that could really be a game changer. We've seen companies that are creating bed sheets that can sense when you're having a hot flash and change the temperature of the sheets and have airflow under them. Wow. We see bracelets like Ember Labs it uses certain like wavelengths that interfere with your parasympathetic nervous system, which is what is causing your hot flashes. So it's like a bracelet that blocks hot flashes. Wow. We're seeing just new drugs come to market, whether that be through Astellas. They have a new hot flash drug. And you know what? I keep saying hot flash, and that is something I think we need improving on, is there are 34 symptoms of menopause. Yep. And right now we're really focused on the hot flash one. But there's another company, it's still in clinical trials, still early development, estrogenics, and it's supposed to be a therapeutic to help with brain fog, specifically brain fog caused by the drop in estrogen. Yes, so, I'm really excited about things like that. I actually heard a woman talk at a conference the other week, and she, shared that she's, experiencing menopause symptoms, and she calls it mental pause, because her biggest symptom is like, and she's this powerful speaker. So I could really see how it really was affecting her life, and why she wanted to even bring it up was because she was this powerhouse keynote, like inspire us all. And she'd be in the middle of a sentence and be like, I don't know what I was about to say, actually. Yeah. And I'm like, God, help that woman.
Yes,
like,
it has to be awful.
Her power, like taking a track athlete and being like, oh, by the way, now you have flat feet. It's like, help them. 100%. This is their superpower.
It's so funny that you say that, because it is my major symptom that I'm dealing with. And whenever I have podcasts, I have to plan to make sure that my hormone replacement therapy is ready to go and full bore and new and fresh, because I know that if I get to a point in the life cycle of the hormone therapy that I'm using, that there will be times where I cannot think of a word. I couldn't think of hammock yesterday. I'm like, what the heck?
What's that word?
It's so frustrating.
Well, I had a COVID a few months ago, and I got the brain fog symptom, and the whole time I was like, is this menopause? Not like that, not that I'm going, but like, is this what it's like? Is this what it's like? Because I'm a communicator too, all day long I'm giving interviews and talking. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So hopefully they figure that out in the next,
Believe me.
No, I was going to say 20 years, but
the most exciting thing though is that there is change on the horizon, and we're all using our voices for that change. That's another reason why we love being in this space, because we know that maybe we won't see the results of what we do in our lifetime, but we know that we're making change for the better.
I mean, the
People that are
women who
coming behind us, right?
Yeah, the women who fought for women to have bank accounts, right? Like,
Yeah.
are like may not have seen women's wealth when they did that, but now women have bank accounts or credit cards, or are able to sign a mortgage. Like
Yeah.
the financial freedom of women has. I'm a millennial, 33-year-old woman, and there's so much talk. I'm also childless, and and I don't know if I'll have children or not, but the fact that I have an option, that I'm even sitting back being like, I'm not sure. Who knows what'll happen? It's like never in history have women been given the space to even consider it. It's either you're having children and you want to have children, and even if you don't think you will, once you're pregnant, you'll want it. Or, oh, you're infertile. So like the only option to be childless as a woman was to be a broken woman, right? That couldn't do it, versus one that had a choice over it. So anyways, there's a lot of, and I think, and why am I bringing that up? I attribute it back to the financial freedom of women, is that we have these choices now that say, hey, I have my own house, or I have this, or I have that, and I have this job, and that's not really fitting in my story.
It's empowering. It's hugely empowering, and it'll be really interesting to see the next 10, 20 years what happens. There's so much that we could talk to you about this morning.
I know.
We hit record, we were like, how long is this podcast? Because we have so much that we could talk about. Truly, I've got this list over here, and we're gonna have to bring you back on to talk about some of these other topics. But before we dive into our rapid fire, is there anything else that's like burning that you want our audience to know, or you want to share?
Just an encouragement to talk about women's health in your everyday life. If you are walking with the tampon to the bathroom, don't put it in your sleeve, and that not everybody is courageous enough to do that. But if you are somebody who has a little bit of umph in you, who's willing to have a bumper sticker that says reproductive rights matter, and you don't need to say, I love abortion, right? But if you could just, call it a vulva versus a coochie, using the right words for things, or, for kids, telling them if this is your arm, that's your penis, right? And like, people aren't supposed to touch your penis, or, but then you move on, right? But making these names, or making this mystery around it, causing shame and discomfort. But also, like, as an adult, if there are men listening to this, you are the person I'm really, really speaking to, because I need you to be bringing up in your male friend groups about your wife's, menopause symptoms and how that's affecting you, and providing safe space for other men to open up about that experience for them too, or be able to ask questions. You would not believe, based on who I am and what I do, how many men approach me and they have really basic questions, and they're like, I don't know who to ask. I really don't know who to ask. Like, how many tampons do you use a day? Like, I really don't know. Right. Like, and they are really looking for a safe person to ask to that won't be ashamed. And, obviously I'm an angry feminist, but like in these moments, I'm not an angry feminist. I'm just a teacher who's able to say, 4 to 5, versus 1, or, and right now with all this talk about abortion, I have men genuinely asking, or, saying, well, do women use abortion as contraception? And I was like, absolutely not. There are not women who are at the abortion clinic once a month to just get their womb emptied. Like, it's not. And then, what? I share my experience with abortion. I tell them what it was like. And they're like, whoa, really? I did, and then when they have a firsthand account, they're like, damn, I can't see a woman choosing to go through that every month, and it's like, but they just need that information. So that's my last big call to action, is the more mainstream we can make this, hopefully we can have, like I said, a Subway advertisement that actually says the word vulva without, people being like
offended, and the nasty emails that come, right?
Yes. So,
well, Brittany, where can people find you?
So you can find me on social media. I'm Dr. Brittany Barreto, Dr. Brittany Barreto. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So whichever vertical you're into, I'm on there. And then listen to the podcast, Femtech Focus, Spotify, Apple, wherever you stream. Also on YouTube. And then the book will be on Amazon at the end of September, Unlocking Women's Health.
That's
Right on.
fantastic. Can we pre-order that book right now, or do we need to wait till September?
The pre-order link is coming soon. I
Okay.
don't have an exact date. I know for
Okay.
sure though it'll be available at the end of September. But if you like if you follow me on
Yeah.
social media, obviously I'll be promoting the heck out of it. If you're interested in more in like the business of Femtech, what I was talking about in the beginning with investing and startups, you can also subscribe to our newsletter. That's Fem Health Insights. That's my consulting firm. So I consult pharma and governments and large companies on their women's health strategy. So we have a really cool newsletter we put out every week with like the main news you need to know. But that's really for if you're interested in kind of the business side of it. It's Fem Health Insights.
It's all
Excellent.
fascinating. It really is. And listeners, we'll put those links in our show notes, but we'll also highlight your book in September in our newsletter. So you can subscribe at medovia.com and we'll provide that link for you, make it nice and easy. Before we leave, we always do rapid fire. So we're excited to get to know you a little bit better. So let's just dive into some fun stuff. Do you prefer, and I think I know the answer to this because of the industry you're in, do you prefer texting or calling?
Texting.
All
Is
right.
that the answer you thought I would
Yes,
say?
yes.
I'm actually a really big fan of voice memos as well, because
Yeah.
I do a lot of, I'm on my computer all day. And so like when I'm walking my dogs, I rather send you a voice memo.
Oh my gosh, you are
We do
music
that
to my
back and
ears
forth.
all the
April
time.
walks in the morning and I walk at night, and we voice text each other the whole time because we do our best thinking then.
And
I
plus,
do
I
my
can't see anything anymore without my glasses, and I
uh,
don't wear those on my walk. So,
Yep.
So
right.
do you
Texting.
prefer a restaurant or preparing your own meal?
Oh, I do love cooking, but I'll say restaurant.
Okay.
Like somebody
Because
waiting for you.
because I love like cultural, like Indian food and sushi and
Yeah.
stuff that I may not be as nearly as good as those
Good at,
restaurant
yeah.
owners are. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I love that too. Okay, so how about reading a good book or binging your favorite show?
Woo! I'd say book.
Yeah.
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 And would the book be an actual book or a Kindle book?
Actual book. This is still, I don't even know if on the spectrum of millennial, if I'm a late or early, but I still love a good highlighter because you know what?
Yeah.
I really love self-help books. I like to learn. And so I'm always writing notes and I'm highlighting and stuff. But I did just read a fiction book, which I was like, good for you, Britt. Like, good job. And it was, listen to this. The book was called Lessons in Chemistry. And it's about
it's a great
interesting.
book.
and
Of
it's now
course
a
you
show
did.
on Apple
I
TV.
don't know if that
but
counts
it's,
for you. I don't think
it's a great book. It's about this female scientist in like the 1960s. So it's totally up my alley. But that was my good last fiction book, and I binged that.
Good for you.
Well, okay, our last question is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I always used to say, I had an academic advisor who said, share the glory grows. And I absolutely believe in that. When something good happens, give credit to everyone, even the smallest ounce of effort they put into it. And then also, though, as I've aged and matured, I also realized as a female leader, I need to own my space. Like if I freaking did it, I freaking did it,
Yeah.
and to own my space. Right. And there's almost this melting of scientific paradigms that I've had to get rid of. So like I have a PhD in genetics. A PhD essentially means that they are just going to humble the heck out of you to the point that you're going to question everything. And as a scientist, you shouldn't be so egotistical that you're like, I know that this is the answer, right? You should always be questioning it. But it almost goes too far. I meet other PhDs that are like this too, where they're like so smart. And yet the whole time they're like, I'm just not sure if I'm qualified. I'm like, are you kidding? So overqualified. So I almost want to make like an asterisk on my like biggest life lesson was share the glory grows. Asterisk, if you did it, own your space, you're awesome.
Yeah,
I like both of those. You're right.
Right?
Let's lift other people up. Let's give credit where credit's due. But you're right. Own it.
Yeah.
Own it. And pat yourself on the back. Right?
Yeah.
It's great advice. Well, we loved having you on the show. We cannot wait for your book. I know our listeners are going to find you all over the place. But let's have you back on. Let's talk about some of the other topics that we didn't have time to discuss. But until then, everyone go out and find joy in the journey. It's been a treat.
Thanks, Brittany.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Medovia Menopause Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for future episodes, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. There are more than 50 million women in the U.S. who are navigating the menopause transition. The situation is compounded by the presence of stigma, shame, and secrecy surrounding menopause, posing significant challenges and disruptions in women's personal and professional spheres. Medovia is out to change the narrative. Learn more at medovia.com. That's MIDOVIA.com.